Welcome to this week's MTD Podcast. We will be discussing finance and the economy during the COVID-19 crisis. I'm Giovanni Albanese, hosting today's show, a passionate engineer and a proud member of the MTD team. I'm joined today by two special guests. Firstly, the one, the only, the Silver Fox, Colin Griffiths, the director of the network, MTD Network, who's been working tirelessly trying to win our engineers in the UK more work during this turbulent time. We also have the pleasure to be joined by Paul Cox, the director of Asset Finance, who's been in engineering and been involved with supplying finance to engineers since 2006. Welcome to the MTD Podcast, guys.
Hello, thank you very much.
Now, Colin, I'm going to start with you. Colin, you used to be in finance prior to joining MTD, so you're very familiar with the finance industry. How important is finance at this moment in time?
Well, a few things, Gio. First of all, I'm not sure about Silver Fox. If you could stop using that reference, they're actually natural highlights. But moving on, we are. This, I think, this is going to be quite controversial because it is something that very close to people's hearts is finance. And generally, when we speak to people about finance, they sort of eyes glaze over. But now is a key to it because at the moment, I'd say 75% of our engineers are really busy working hard doing all these parts. 25%, I mean, rough figures, quiet. The 25% are going to stop getting money and they need support for their banks. On the other side, where they're really busy, they're going to need money because potentially their clients won't, their people they're supplying to won't be able to pay them. They are going to need support from the banks. And I have seen massive lack of support. I mean, I saw a post from a high street bank this morning saying we're here to help, 5 easy steps. And you know what? None of the comments were even vaguely polite about support. So, but I want to take another step back. Sorry. Talk about support for business. And this is very brief. So we'll talk about finance and the economy. But I was chatting to Steve Weiss from Mainland Engineering, having a cracking time at the moment, very, very, very busy. He's had to do a couple of, one or two furloughs, unfortunately. But he said, you know what? Lack of information, not just about finance, about how to run the business and things like that, and what we should be, not run the business, but what we should be doing these times. He said he got a great letter on the 8th of April. I know it's a few days ago now. I can't give you the link because it's about 3 days long, but he said it just summarised the information he needs. So we can put that link on the podcast, just if you need a little bit of guidance. I think we're all probably there now because that's 2-3 weeks ago, a little while ago, but great help. But it's ultimately it's saying engineering is an essential service. You can still work if you can do safely.
So, Colin, you've obviously been visiting, in contact, shall I say, remotely with your engineering network, the end users within the UK. You work closely with Paul Cox. You've known Paul for a long time. Paul, how have you been finding things, out there at the minute?
I think it's been a very challenging time for everybody, and that's quite an understatement. I think I reiterate what Colin said. The frustration with companies and business owners is there's a lot of rhetoric about funding that's available, but the reality is it's getting access to that funding. And we've seen time and time again, you've only got to pick up the newspaper or certainly go online, and you can see that only a small percentage of people are actually getting this government money that's been out there under the CBILS scheme.
Sorry, what does CBILS stand for, just for those who aren't aware?
So the CBILS stands for Coronavirus Business Interruption Lending Scheme. There's two levels of it. There's the SME market and then there's the larger market, but we're predominantly talking about CBILS.
The CBILS is essentially for the SMEs, which is where a lot of our engineers sit.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, if you sort of take I take a broad brush on this, sort of businesses sub sort of 10 million. I think it's about 15 million actually is the parameter, but certainly sub 10 million, which probably encompasses 95% of any of our businesses that we deal with.
Colin, you mentioned that 75% or rough figures of the engineers that you're currently communicating with seem to be very busy. So why does this 75% still need funding? I'm a little bit lost there, Colin.
It's all about cash flow, Gio. So they're really, really busy. They've got to buy their stock. They've got to pay their suppliers, but then they'll send that stock out the door. Are they going to get paid? Normally, they might get paid in 30 days, but the people they're supplying that to, they might not be getting paid. It's a knock-on effect down the whole supply chain. So instead of getting paid in 30 days, they're getting paid in 60 days or 90 days. That will affect their cash flow. So they can't pay their HPs, their loans and things like that. So they need that buffer just to cover them over the next 3 to 6 months. And that's where the banks have got to step up and be open, transparent, but more, contactable. So with that in mind, what if someone, even if they're not in problems at the moment, it'd be pertinent to get in contact. What would the process be, Paul?
Sorry, Colin, in terms of getting hold of money?
Well, yeah, I mean, is the first point of call their bank or to you, or what would you suggest?
So we sit in the broker market, which is quite a strong degree of funding for people. But this directive that we've been given is businesses really contact their main provider, bank provider first. So they're the ones that have been given access. The high street's been access to the government money under the CBILS schemes, so they should be contacting them first. And in majority of cases, they are doing that.
Okay, can I ask a question then? You contact your bank and feedback, just like you said earlier, feedback online is 4 to 6 weeks. All I've had is a couple of emails and a couple of texts saying we'll be in contact. 4 to 6 weeks is not quick enough. You're going to be running out of cash by then. So what else can they do?
So let me just break CBILS down a little bit more. So CBILS is effectively funding. It's a fund of money that people can request for, and they have to go through a normal proposal with the bank or the banks they're with in terms of applying for a pot of money. But if I break it down to, there's CBILS, which is loans. It could be for overdrafts. It could be for asset finance, and potentially it could be for invoice finance as well. It all depends what the customer's requirements are. If it's for purchasing equipment, it could be just for asset finance. If it's for cash flow, it could be, most of the time it's going to be for lending, but it also could really be for overdrafts and invoice financing as well.
Paul, you mentioned asset finances. Obviously, prior to the COVID-19 crisis, you were supplying finance for people to effectively buy new machinery. Now, are you still seeing people investing in new machinery at this moment in time?
Well, surprisingly, Colin sort of touched on this earlier on. He's saying there's a number of his customers that are still very busy and they're being strangled. They've got a stranglehold because they don't have access to the money. So they're actually saying, we've got orders in, but we can't complete the orders because we don't have cash. So the simple answer is yes, I am seeing new business still come through. Not as much I normally would, but there are still some positive companies out there that are looking to invest in new equipment because their order books are full. So they have not taken advantage, that they've been in a position where their business has taken advantage of the current situation.
What do you think of this, Colin?
Well, I just want to clarify with Paul, because you said the route was go to your bank, CBILS. Again, I want to reiterate that they're not geared up for the amount of applications. Yeah, I mean, there's real disconcert, whatever the word is, with the high street banks at the moment. But they kind of preempted what was going on here. But still, they're not stepping up their game. But if I've applied for this, if I've done my application, I still haven't heard after 4 to 6 weeks, can I come to you, for example? Is that the next route, or are my hands tied? I have to go to the CBILS option first.
No, your hands aren't tied. I mean, the biggest problem we're having is the volume. So the banks can't cope with the actual volume that's coming through. And because of this, they're getting huge delays. The other thing is, as everybody's aware, we're working from home. So they haven't got the infrastructure, the IT infrastructure that they're actually used to. So this is also impacting on their ability to deal with the volumes. But yes, we advise that the route to go through is through your bank. But if you're not getting any response or any help from your bank, then yes, come to us in the broker market. Now we do have a number of funders that have been accredited to actually to use the CBILS money. So you have to request to the government to be able to be CBILS accredited. So then you can actually then lend this money out to your customers. So not every lender in the broker market will have access to CBILS money, but we do have lenders that will have access to loan money, asset finance money, and invoice finance money as well.
Paul, you're mentioning actual lending of money or kind of grants, if you like. But if this seems to be such a delayed, or there seemed to be such a delayed response in this due to the high volumes, is there any kind of repayment holidays or on their premises, on their machinery, on anything that they have on finance that can maybe tide them over so it reduces their outgoings during this period?
I think there's three elements that probably I can sort of separate things just to give a bit more clarity, because there is a bit of confusion over this. So the first thing you mentioned, grants. These are not grants. There is grant money that's available, but that's awarded by your local councils. If you are a small business owner, you're paying small business rates. So that's grant money, and that doesn't necessarily need to be paid back, but please look at the T's and C's. That comes from your local council. Then there is what we call the 3-month payment holiday. So most of the funders, if you've got an agreement, a loan or a mortgage or asset finance, they pretty much, I haven't heard any cases where they haven't agreed a 3-month payment holiday. But as you can imagine, that's going to come to an end very, very soon. So the one that's really pressing and the one that's really on people's minds is the CBILS, which is the loan scheme. And that's where we're having the issue with the banks. The banks can't cope with the volume. So, the next route really is to say, well, who else can help us? Well, it's the broker market that can help you. We do have access to money.
Can you give us any examples of this?
Well, I think a couple of things there. I mean, I won't name who it was, but I was on the phone to an engineer the other day, and he was absolutely desperate. It's a great engineering company. It is successful, but short-term cash flow. And he's like, I've spoken to my bank. I don't have a relationship manager anymore. This is a story faced by, you hear it all the time, and they're just not coming to the party. I have got my 3-month repayment holidays, but I need some more help. And I think the great thing was phone Paul, as in Paul here, and it's all about communication, responding, and having that conversation. And you were straight on the phone to him, helped him out, gave him a bit of peace of mind, and we're able to give him a bit of guidance. And I think that's what people want. They don't want to be, we'll call you in a week and then it's another 3 weeks. They want to speak to somebody, even if it's a yes or a no or maybe. They want some guidance. Absolutely. And I think that's where people like Paul stand up and they're available and they can really, really help.
So, Paul, are you available for all these engineers to contact you? Can we supply them with your details?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, what I will point out is, we don't have a magic wand we can say you will get the money. It still needs to be a viable proposition, and you need to do a full proposal, which is where I will assist and help you. So you'll need to provide things like your bank statements and your latest trading accounts and a rationale for what you're looking to do with the money. That's a given. But yes, our offering is usually very quicker than the banks, and although it has had an impact in terms of what's been happening, we don't have as much direct access. But Colin's given an example. I chatted to somebody a couple of days back, and I'm just waiting on information to come back to me before I can get a proposal up the line. So it is a viable route, and we do have access to money, and clearly a lot quicker than the banks do.
Yeah, Colin, I mean, these are really valid points, aren't they?
Absolutely. Well, I had a few points I want to discuss prior to this, but something that's come to mind while we've been on the podcast, R&D tax relief. I know we can liaise with Paul, people can liaise with Paul on that to sort that out, but we're actually looking at that as a company. Prior to the lockdown, we were looking at this anyway, but it's a great way to reduce your tax bill and get tax credits back. So that can help your cash flow. And it is, in the scheme of things, a relatively simple process. So I'm just throwing it out there as another source just to help that cash flow. And Paul, you're available for basically the initial contact on that as well, I understand.
Yeah, very much. We've seen an uplift in inquiries for R&D tax, and it's a drum I've been banging for many years, really, because it's free money in effect. It's money you've paid out in terms of your own business through tax, and if you're eligible, then you can claim some of that money back. But I'd always say look at a professional company rather than just looking at your own accountant, because accountants do accounts and R&D, whereas professional R&D just do R&D tax credits. So that's what they're geared up to do. So it's a way of getting money back into your business. And at the moment, cash is king, isn't it? That's what's becoming the biggest problem.
And I think that's a really valid point, Paul. I think that people that are not aware of R&D, it's when you're investing money into R&D, into research and development, into manufacturing your products or processes within your manufacturing facility, which I would imagine most engineering facilities do. Now, Paul, I would imagine you've got some kind of inside banking information in regards to kind of a prediction, if you like, in regards to when this will be all over. Have you got? Is that true, or are we still all? Is it still all unknown?
I would love to put my Merlin's hat on, but unfortunately, I don't have that facility. It is an unknown, and I was talking to Colin earlier. It is changing week by week, day by day, even, and it's adjusting because it'll change again because the government money's not getting through to the people that need it, which are the companies. So there'll have to be some changes there as well. We are one route, but they're going to have to make some bigger changes so that money filters down quickly. So in terms of it's a time scale, couldn't give you a time scale, but I would say you've got to be thinking more long term. You've certainly got to be thinking the best part of this year and going into next year, because we haven't got a vaccination. That's going to take some time to get through. So social distancing is going to have a major impact for quite some time. There's a number of different elements that feed into this, but please don't think short term. This is a long term thing.
Absolutely. I think that the fact that these funds, etc., are all available really just emphasise that, really. It's totally unprecedented times. Now, this is not just affecting the engineers that we deal with, it's affecting everybody in the world. How is it affecting the economy, Colin?
Well, I've been doing some research, as you'd expect. So I want to cover off a few key points. So first of all, you mentioned about how long it's going to take to recover and things like that. I've got a figure to come to us later, but I was looking at previous recessions because I'm an interesting guy like that. I know. For big recession, 1929. Where was that, do you reckon?
That was America.
Yeah, America was, gentlemen, absolutely. So lasted into the 1930s. So that's real doom and gloom. Sorry about that. Next one. 1970. Well, there's been others, of course, but 1973. And do you know what this why this came about? Any ideas, Paul?
To do with oil?
Absolutely, yes. Because they bunged up. They put up the oil price because of the support of Israel in 1973. Now, next one, I'm going to put you on the spot, Gio. 1979. Why was there a recession then?
Well, it's usually to do with oil, so I'm going to go with oil again, Colin.
Gio, absolutely. To quote you, the Iranian Revolution. Now, you two are probably, well, actually, Coxie, you're probably old enough to remember that. So, but the next one, I'm going to go back to Paul. 1980. Well, not the next one, but this isn't a full list of them all, but just a few. 1989. What happened then, Paul? Do you reckon? What was the result of a recession then?
I know what the result was. The house market absolutely crashed because I was caught up in it.
Well, I'll come to some interesting facts on that later. But what do you think caused it?
I would say stock market related, but I couldn't give you some specifics.
Oh, look at that. He's been doing his research. Absolutely. Stock market grossly overpriced. And don't quote me on all of these. These are just sort of a very generic quote statement. So if a professor of economics comes on and says, well, that's slightly wrong, I will bow to his better judgment, of course. Next one, 1997. Gio, what do you reckon?
Wow. I really don't know, Colin. I really don't know, mate.
Thank you for your valid input there. I think this was actually, if I gave you, what was his name? Was it Nick Gleason, was it? Leeson? Who's the bloke who was over in Singapore and did the bunk because he spent all their money?
Oh, yes, I can remember that on the news. Yes, I can, Colin.
That's right. I'm sure it wasn't.
He got locked up.
He did. I think he's now living in Ireland and doing talks to people. But I think that actually started around that time. It was due to the Thailand not pegging its currency to the US dollar, but that had a knock-on effect all around Asia. Anyway, next one, 2007. Paul, Mr. Cox, I'll ask you, what happened in 2007?
Well, that's what we call the banking or the financial crisis, 2007. So that was very much blamed on the banks.
Absolutely. The Big Short, a great film and a great book, if you're so inclined. Basically, and this is a very controversial statement, they had some high-level products sold by a bunch of idiots who didn't actually understand what they were selling. They were selling. I won't go into the deep understanding of the product because I don't really have it, but they were selling off these subprime mortgages, packaging them up, selling them on. They were worth absolutely nothing, and these people making a fortune. And then someone spotted that this was all going to fall over, and they made some money back of it. But it brought banks down and all sorts. So anyway, enough of that doom and gloom. But a lot of those things were oil price related. What happened on the 20th of April, 2020?
Negative price oil. The oil for the first time in history was in a negative, Colin.
Absolutely. They are producing so much at the moment, and it's not being used. Obviously, people don't want it. So, and they got to pay they got to take it on. They've got to pay to store it. So they don't want it. So it's unprecedented times. Where are we going to move? Where are we going to go from here? So we've had oil. We've had financial markets. This is obviously a pandemic. So how are we going to move forward? Do you know how long it takes? I'm going to throw this one at you, Paul. Generally, to recover from a recession.
3 to 4 years.
So not
4 to 5 years.
Not a big session, Paul, on a Friday night. A recession.
So 4 to 5 years.
Well, 41 months, so 3.5 years. So not a bad guess.
Yeah.
So now another thing is interest rates. Now, looking at, I know I sound like a complete nerd here. I'd like to bore you with the fact that I look back at interest rates down to about the 1970s. When do you think they peaked? And we're looking at base rate here, the Bank of England base rate. Gio, when do you reckon they peaked? Between 1970 and now?
I reckon it would have been not long after, I reckon the 1980s, Colin.
God, that's very broad. I'll give you that one. 1981, 15.13% as a base rate. So you'd be paying mortgage rates around 20%. Affects everybody.
People were losing that. Yeah, they were getting in negative equity at the time, weren't they? It was a bad state of affairs.
It certainly was. And we'll come to that in a minute because Paul Cox has already alluded to that. House prices. But base rate at the moment, where is it? I'll ask you, Mr. Cox.
0.1.
There you go. He knows his stuff. And that is really, really upset me because the day they lowered that rate, I'd sent some paperwork in and I locked my fixed rate mortgage in the day before they lowered that interest rate. So I'm fuming. But anyway, moving on. Anyway, that's another story. I won't do that. Now, I mentioned all this. So we got previous recessions. How long will it go on for? Interest rates. Interest rates affect everybody. Absolutely. Well, I'd say majority of people, you've all got a mortgage. But also your house prices. Now, some quick facts on house prices. Now, I've been doing some more research because obviously I'm really bored here. Now, to January this year, average house price increases were 1.3% for the year. So ticking up. So what do you reckon the average house price value is, Gio, at the moment, prior to this?
Ooh, that's a good question, Colin.
I know.
200,000?
Well, that's very generous of you, Jay, because I've seen your mansion and you've got to be tipping six figures for yours. Yeah, average price, 231,000. Now, taking a step back, this is going to be to Mr. Cox here. 1989, I think you alluded that you got caught up. The peak price up to that period was rounding up £63,000. God, what could you buy for a house for £63,000 now? But what do you think it fell to over the coming recession, Paul?
If the peak was 63,
yeah,
it probably have fallen by about 30%.
Ooh, so if you don't mind me asking, and people are going to hear this, how did it affect you personally?
No, at that point in time, I lost my house
Bloody hell.
Mm. It just went too far. So I was in huge negative equity, and unfortunately, I lost my house because I lost my job as well.
Wow.
This is a cheery story, but not this particular one, but this is a cheery podcast, by the way. But the actual, just an overall figure, 20% price reduction. 2007, the next sort of big price fall, obviously the financial crisis, house prices on average 184,000. Gio, what do you reckon they fell to?
I'd say it'd be similar to previous 20% reduction.
Oh, good guess, Gio. Yeah, 100. Well, rounding up or down, 150,000. So about 19% reduction. So I've seen forecasts that this will affect house prices by about 13%. So again, it's not doom and gloom. You're in your house. You're happy. You've hopefully still got a job. You're not paying rent. Keep going. Keep strong. But what I'm talking about here is interest rates are really, really low. So people should be taking advantage where they can afford it to borrow, I think. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, it's a good thing. Yeah, borrowing is still going to be very cheap comparatively. Yeah. So yeah, it's a good opportunity to actually do that, to get yourself in a stronger position further on down the line. I mean, I am no economist, and so I'd always say take advice, but it seems the obvious thing to do.
Absolutely. And one thing I'm going to say here as well is, I mean, those were some I thought quite interesting figures. Hopefully they weren't too negative, but I've seen, talking to a lot of engineers and a lot of OEMs as well, now is a great time because they've looked at different processes and they're streamlining those processes, thinking how, now is it a time for us to reflect, how can we work better and work different? And they've seen ways that, we can do this differently, and going forward, that's the way we'll be doing it. They're streamlining their business. So I think when this ends, and as Paul predicted in 3 weeks' time, I'm joking, Paul, obviously not.
I wish.
When it does end, businesses, there'll be a big surge. I mean, don't quote me on this. This is just my opinion, and probably no one taking notice. There will be a big surge in demand. People will be more efficient, more profitable. I think it's a great, great opportunity. But there's me having a little rant. Gio, what do you reckon?
Well, Colin, I'm actually quite surprised. Really, I thought that was very interesting. You were right, and I think that Martin Lewis has got some competition on his hands. Martin Lewis, the money expert. But from what you just mentioned there, in regards to OEMs, end users alike, manufacturers, I think that there is also, where whatever the situation, the only thing that's ever certain in life is change, and change also creates opportunity. So in this moment in time, there's still lots of opportunity out there, and as you mentioned, Colin, quite rightly, I think it's a perfect opportunity for engineers to re-educate themselves, to look at their current processes, to look at how they can produce components more efficiently, how they can present more components to the spindle, so on and so forth. So, we're all in the same boat, we're all in the same situation, and we've all got to just try and remain as positive as we possibly can. But no, very interesting, Colin.
Thank you. And I think another key, I've gone on with all those facts and figures and things like that, but I think key to this is what we alluded to earlier. Things are changing all the time. A lot of people are going to need finance. You just want to talk to somebody. So I think that's great where Paul can stand in and go, actually, just pick up the phone to me. You might not like the answer because I can't help you, but you'll be open and honest, and there's someone there to talk to. I don't know. What do you think on that, Paul?
Well, I think what I will start with is what Gio said earlier on, I think is crucial and key, and we're seeing it already. People diversifying. Now, I know it's because they're helping out with the PPE at the moment, but how quickly have some companies diversified? And I think that's the key to coming through this. It's being agile and being able to make those changes quickly. So I think there are a lot of positives actually going forward. I think companies that do come through this will be the stronger companies. They're the ones that have got the foresight, and they're the ones that will be here at the end of it and will benefit most definitely. There's no two ways about it. We're in the middle of this, and we've got some very, very tough times ahead. But it doesn't mean to say it's all going to be negative. So there is access to money. Money is available, and if you're not getting it through your high street bank, then use somebody like me. Hopefully me. Please contact me. And then, like Colin said, I will give you a very honest and straight answer, and a quick answer as well, is in terms of, is it something that we can support you with or not? And certainly, if I can't support you, I'll point you in a direction where I think somebody could.
Paul, well, we can only but thank you for sharing your expertise on the MTD podcast, and it's fantastic that you're offering your time to the engineers out there. And I think it's just absolutely so important as well. It's not just your time; it's your expertise. People don't know who to call to, don't know who to speak to. They phone up their bank and they're waiting to speak to someone for 3-4 hours. And when they finally get through, they're not through to the right person. So it's absolutely brilliant that you can offer your services to the engineers out there that really do need help. I totally agree with what you just said as well, Paul. I think that, diversity and adapting to the current situation is absolutely key. And what we've also been finding at MTD is the people that are investing in the latest technology and innovation seem to be kind of leapfrogging ahead. Not that anyone's going, not that it's a competition, but they seem to be adapting a lot better, especially with being able to run 24/7 unmanned shifts, for example. It's something that, you need to continually invest in the latest technology to progress, in my opinion. Paul, Colin, any last thoughts? Let's start with you, Paul.
Yeah, one thing to be aware of, banks make their money by lending money. Now, at the moment, the CBILS money is money from the government. So they make their real money by lending what we call their own money, new money. So don't be scared if you've got projects that you want to push forward and it's new borrowing for new equipment and such like. Don't think you're not going to get the money because we're in this current situation. Banks are still open to do new money, and I'm still very much open to actually do new proposals for you. I mean, the key thing I would say is, yes, it's tough, but you've got to be positive. And
absolutely,
see what's out there, take notice of what's out there, and streamline your business accordingly. It's in your control.
Paul, brilliant advice. Thank you very much. Colin, any last thoughts?
Well, I've done all the serious stuff. This is a very serious statement, mate. Paul, I don't suppose you can lend me a couple of quid, could you?
Well, we need to put a proposal forward, Colin.
Guys, thank you very much for participating in the MTD podcast. If you've listened to this podcast and you have any questions whatsoever, don't hesitate to contact Paul Cox directly. He's very active on LinkedIn and you'll be able to connect with him on LinkedIn. Contact Colin for any inquiries in regards to winning new work through the MTD network. And don't forget to subscribe to the MTD podcast, which you can quite simply do using your iPhone or smartphone, or even listen to it on the MTD website. Until next week, the MTD podcast.
Thanks for listening to the MTD podcast. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. Find more episodes on MTDCNC.com.